Most people go through life unaware that the spiritual world around them is far more active than they imagine. But there is one truth, one secret. Demons absolutely hate when you discover, because the moment you understand it, their influence over your mind, your emotions, and your decisions begins to collapse. Every fear they whisper, every attack they send, every doubt they carefully plant. It all starts losing power the instant you wake up to this reality. Demons operate in darkness, in confusion, in moments where you think you're alone. But there is something they fear more than anything. A believer who finally understands the authority they were given. The authority that exposes every hidden plan and cuts every spiritual chain. Today, you're going to see exactly what demons never wanted you to know. The reason demons hate when you discover this truth goes far deeper than most people realize. It is not simply about spiritual knowledge or memorizing verses. It is about awakening to a reality that has been hidden from you since the moment you were born. A reality in which you carry an authority that terrifies the kingdom of darkness. Demons operate not through strength, but through strategy. Their power is rooted in illusion, manipulation, psychological warfare, and spiritual blindness. They do not dominate by force. They dominate by convincing you that you have none. But once you understand what has been placed inside you, their influence begins to unravel piece by piece. Demons despise when you recognize that their attacks are not signs of their power, but signs of their fear. They attack because you are valuable, because you carry potential, because you are created with a destiny that threatens their agenda. The enemy never fights what does not matter. The pressure you feel, the heaviness you've endured, the spiritual battles you've experienced, they are all indicators of the danger you pose to the forces of darkness once you awaken to the truth. They want you to believe that fear is stronger than faith, that anxiety is stronger than peace, and that your past is too heavy to escape from. They want you to think your mistakes define you, that your failures disqualify you, and that your identity is tied to the lowest moments of your life. Because if they can keep you believing these lies, then they can keep you from walking in the authority given to you long before you ever took your first breath. But when you finally understand who stands with you, everything changes. When you realize that heaven is not distant, but actively fighting for you, demons lose their advantage. When you recognize that the presence of God is not a concept, but a reality, their shadows lose their shape. When you understand that your prayers are not empty words, but weapons that strike the unseen realm, every strategy formed against you begins to collapse. Demons hate when you comprehend the power of your mind, because your mind is the battlefield where most spiritual warfare takes place. If they can control your thoughts, they can control your emotions. If they can control your emotions, they can influence your decisions. And if they can influence your decisions, they can direct the course of your life. That is why they bombard you with doubts, insecurities, temptations, and discouragement. Not because they are strong, but because they fear what will happen if you realize that you can resist them. The truth is this: the enemy cannot destroy you, so he tries to distract you. He cannot stop your calling, so he tries to confuse you. He cannot steal what God has placed in your hands, so he tries to convince you to give it up on your own. That is why they hate when you wake up spiritually, because the moment you recognize the difference between attack and assignment, between deception and discernment, Between fear and authority, the battle shifts. Suddenly, what once intimidated you begins to lose its power. What once overwhelmed you becomes something you can stand against. Demons also fear when you learn the truth about identity, because the greatest weapon you possess is not a sword, not a prayer, not a verse. It is knowing who you are. If you know who you are, you cannot be manipulated. If you know who you are, you cannot be bought. If you know who you belong to, you cannot be spiritually enslaved. Identity is what gives authority weight. Identity is what gives prayer force. Identity is what makes the enemy tremble. When you realize that you were created in the image of God, redeemed through the sacrifice of Christ, and empowered through the Spirit, darkness loses its ability to deceive you. Demons hate when you understand the power of truth, because truth exposes. Truth destroys lies that have been used to hold you captive. Truth breaks generational patterns. Truth realigns your mind with heaven's perspective. And once truth enters, darkness cannot remain. It is not a fair fight. Light does not struggle with darkness. It replaces it. They also fear when you understand spiritual laws, because the spiritual world is structured, ordered, governed. Nothing is random. Nothing is chaotic. Every force, every presence, every influence operates under authority. And demons know that you have been given authority over them. They know it, even if you don't. So their mission is to keep you unaware of it. The moment you learn that spiritual authority is real, that your words carry weight, that your faith is a shield, that your obedience is a fortress, they lose the ability to access your life at will. To understand how this hidden spiritual truth operates, you must first recognize that the invisible world around you is far more structured and deliberate than most people imagine. Nothing that happens in your life, no attack, no temptation, no fear, no confusion, occurs by accident. Everything is part of a larger strategy of influence. Demons rely on a system built on deception, misdirection, and silent manipulation. Their methods are subtle, calculated, and often disguised as ordinary thoughts, emotions, or circumstances. But once you understand how they operate and how this truth dismantles their influence, you are no longer vulnerable to the same traps. Demons work by observing your patterns. They study your weaknesses, your reactions, your insecurities, your emotional triggers. They learn what discourages you, what distracts you, what tempts you, what wounds you. They feed on ignorance. They thrive where there is spiritual blindness. Every lie they whisper becomes a door. Every fear you agree with becomes a foothold. Every temptation you entertain becomes a chain. Their greatest weapon is not power. It is the illusion of power. But the moment you learn how to resist them, their influence breaks. Resistance is not passive. It is spiritual warfare, rooted in understanding. You resist by refusing to entertain lies, by identifying the source of negative thoughts, by aligning your mind with truth instead of feelings, by recognizing that every attack is a reaction to your potential. Resistance is not shouting. It is awareness. It is clarity. It is knowing that you do not fight alone.